6, so we have 2 minutes. Give 2 more minutes for people to walk in. Who's excited? Jim, do you think it's okay to just start? We have 2 minutes, or do you want me to wait? Okay, all right, perfect. No, I think you just go after something. I like the timing too, that's subtle. Right in front of me. Yeah, okay. Excellent. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us here at the Saco City Hall. Tonight's panel discussion will be on accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. We're here because ADUs are becoming more important in the role of housing, not only in the conversation here in Saco, but around the country. Whether you've heard them called in-law apartments or granny flats, coach houses, the idea is the same. It's a smaller secondary home on the same property that gives families more flexibility, creates new housing options, and makes better use of the space that we already have. So tonight you'll hear directly from people that work with ADUs every day. We have contractors, we have lenders, and we have city leaders and officials. This evening, you'll be hearing from Jeff Bowman at Backyard ADUs, David Ernstram, thank you, from City View Construction, Mark Crooker from Bangor Savings. We also have Tammy Tracy from Saco Biddeford Savings, Matthew Lee from Kennebunk Savings. Did I get that wrong? Kennebunk Savings, David Toomey, Planning Department with the City of Saco, and Sean McCarthy, Assessing, City of Saco. So I'll invite each of them to introduce themselves in just a moment, but I wanted to let you know that after their introductions, we're going to start with a short overview. That's going to give you some basic understanding, and then we'll circle back to the panelists that'll walk you through. We'll have some questions and answers at the end. We'll make sure that we have plenty of time for that. So with that, let's begin by asking each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, their role, and what perspective they bring to the world of ADUs, whether it's building, finance, or planning. So we'll start on my left here.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Crocker. I'm with Bangor Savings Bank. So I am on the financial side of things, helping people finance their ADU projects. I serve Southern Maine.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Matt Lee. I'm the Retail Lending Director with Kennebunk Savings Bank, and I'm on the finance side of it.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Tracy. I work for Saco and Biddeford Savings out of the Portland and South Portland office, and I'm on the finance side.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shannon Chisholm. I'm the Assistant City Planner for the City of Saco, and I will be running a mic to you once we get to the question and answer portion of tonight.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Bowman with Backyard ADUs. I'm a small home advisor for the Maine region, New Hampshire, and part of Massachusetts. So we are a design build company.
Hello, everyone. David Arenstam. I am a general contractor living in Saco, retired Thornton Academy teacher, and I would consider us a very traditional home builder. We just finished a house with an attached ADU.
Hi, I'm David Toomey. I'm Director of Code Enforcement. My job is to interpret the city code and ordinances, so most people come to me to answer their questions.
Hi, I'm Sean McCarthy. I'm the Deputy Assessor here for the City of Saco, and I assist Dave with all of the planning side of getting an ADU off the ground and going.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those great introductions. Now we're going to kick things off. I'm going to hand it over to Jeff from Backyard ADUs. He's going to walk through what ADUs are, the types you might see, and what some of the key rules are here in Saco.
Great, thanks, Shay. So we are a builder. We're based out of Brunswick, Maine. We specialize in accessory dwelling units, and that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. So just a quick who we are, founded in 2019, ever growing. We're setting an ADU a week at the moment and are looking to keep growing in the years to come with that throughout our regions. So you guys are all here. What is an accessory dwelling unit? Y'all can read that, but essentially what we're trying to do is increase capacity in existing infrastructure. So in neighborhoods, in places that, rather than expanding the city limits, we're trying to build smaller houses, bring families together, maybe do some rental income. There's a whole slew of reasons why people are interested in building ADUs. A few different types of ADUs. So an ADU can either be a detached structure. In order to be an accessory dwelling unit, you need to have a primary dwelling unit to be accessory to. So, a secondary or tertiary, as the case could be, home. So detached ADU, separate, smaller house typically. Internal would be, renovating internal space. Coupled with that, you could also do like a conversion, like a garage or shed conversion of sorts. And then attached would be separate living quarters. And to qualify as an ADU, you need to have separate, facilities like a kitchen and those types of things. So. We typically build detached ADUs, but we also build attached ADUs. We do, new construction is what we do, specialize at Backyard. And the City of Saco actually has a great guide that can be found online. I've linked it here. I'm not sure if we're going to send these slides out afterward, but it can be easily found with a Google search. And we printed it off. Yep, so paper copies in the back, very easy to find. So that's a nod to Saco for doing that. That's rather rare that they've done that. Some highlights that are in that rule book there is they don't allow short-term rentals in Saco with their ADUs. So minimum 30-day rental. So typically, what I see with my clients, we're often bringing families together, so people aren't typically trying to Airbnb or VRBO their ADUs. A generous maximum square footage here in Saco, 1,000 square feet, and just a couple other common simple rules that they have here. Sharing a common driveway and adhere to primary residential setbacks. So every residential, every house is going to be in a different zoning district, and you need to abide by single-family dwelling setbacks, which is pretty typical. There are, there's a couple ADUs that we've built, all pretty recently. There was also, I wanted to just mention that there was a state law that got passed this summer. LD 1829, I believe is what it was. And at the state level, they just allowed ADUs to be even more accessible and allowed throughout all municipalities in the state. So back in, I think 2023 to 2024 is when it went into effect. LD 2003 got passed, allowing ADUs by right throughout the state. And then this summer, they passed LD 1829, which will go into effect next summer, next July. They nixed the owner occupancy requirement for ADUs in single families, meaning that you don't need to live, the owner of the property doesn't need to live in one of the units, which is nice, it's permissible. ADUs cannot require fire suppression sprinklers, so there was a few municipalities in the state that required fire suppression sprinklers for ADUs, and at the state level, they said that you could still do it if you wanted to do the sprinklers, but you're not required to do the sprinklers, which can be a fairly significant cost to the total project. And ADUs are no longer limited to single-family lots, so you can do them at the state level. They're saying that they have to be allowed on lots that already have, two multifamily, different things like that. So all that to say, you would still need to abide by the setbacks and all the other requirements for every municipality, but they're trying to make it more accessible at the state level, which is worth noting. Okay, that was it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. That really gives us a solid foundation. What I'd like to do now is come back to our panelists and to talk through the opportunities, the challenges, and the real-world experiences with ADUs in Saco. So what I'd like to start with is a question. We're going to sort of split it up as best we can. The first question is, why now? What's behind this growing interest in ADUs here in Saco and across the region? I'm going to start on this side first.
I think the biggest thing right now is the housing shortage. Affordability is a main issue. It's becoming harder for people to find housing within their budget. ADUs are a way to add smaller, affordable units on your property. It offers rental income for homeowners, multi-generational living, which I think is a huge thing that we see right now with families, aging families, growing kids, not being able to find the housing. And then the law that just passed recently in 2022 and 2025, I think that helps as well.
Great, thank you. And from our construction panelists, would one of you field this question, please?
Thank you. So we just finished building an ADU for a family, and most of the people that come to us, we're a very traditional construction company. We build basically houses for families, and so a lot of times a family will come to us and say, we'd like to build a new house. What we really would like to do is build a house where we could have an attached ADU or a detached ADU and be near our grandchildren or be near our children. And we've done a couple of those as well, and they really have turned out quite nicely in terms of that. We also get a lot of people that have come to us and said that they are looking for a place. They've got an aging parent or an aging member of their family, and they're looking for a place where they can live nearby and kind of keep an eye on them and take care of them. So that also is there. We've also had inquiries from siblings, believe it or not. Siblings that got along. That where they wanted to live right next to each other, and they figured that that was a way where both of them could build homes that are affordable for themselves and their families. And in all cases, that seems to be true. So.
Thank you. And from the city?
Since LD 2003 passed, there's been more word on the street about ADUs. We've had them for a while, but because of that, more word is getting out there, so we're having more inquiries. Also, with taxes the way they are, it gives people a chance to either put one on their property so they can age in place by renting it out, or moving into the smaller space and then renting out their main house so they can stay on their property and not have to sell.
That's excellent. Thank you for the answers. I want to look to the lenders. From your perspective, what's the biggest misunderstanding in terms of financing an ADU?
I think the biggest misconception is that it actually decreases the property value, but it doesn't. Having an ADU actually increases your property value by adding that square footage on your current existing property.
I think I'd like to add as well that another misconception is because generally ADUs offer a construction aspect to it. So for the financial perspective, I'm sure some of you who do have mortgages have may have a really low rate on it, and I think a misconception is, well, do I have to refinance and get out of that low rate in order to get the financing to build the ADU? We'll talk about like financing options in a couple minutes, but I think that's a common misconception as well.
I would agree. The financing hurdle can be probably the most challenging part of starting a project, and that's why I always say the first thing you should do is to reach out to a lender who does offer the financing for ADUs, and then they can really point you in the right direction on how to get the right loan.
And the three of you all provide residential financing for ADUs, correct?
That's
Yes.
correct. Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Going over to the construction, what makes a property a good candidate for an ADU, and what might be a red flag?
Yeah, that's a good question. My perspective on that, when we've surveyed, or not surveyed, we've evaluated hundreds of lots at this point in time as a company, and typically if it's going to be heavily zoned, meaning that where there's a lot of specific overlays, like historic overlays, or you're close to shoreland or things of that sort. Watershed, wetland overlays can be a hurdle to jump through. Generally, the lay of the land, if you have a nice clear spot where an ADU could go and you can see how construction could access that spot, you probably have a good property for an ADU, especially if you're not butt up against your setbacks in the town. So those are typical easy things that we see. Some more rural areas will have a septic system, so if you have if you have an older septic system or you're maxed out, you know that you're maxed out, you likely would either need to expand or get a new septic system, which could add cost to the project. So there's a few things that you can think about, and we're happy to have those discussions with you as well.
Thank you. One of the first things that we generally do when somebody says that they'd like to have an ADU on their property is, number one, look at the size of the property, because they're going to share a common driveway and they have to meet setbacks. So one of the first questions I'll say to somebody is, well, where do you think you'd like the ADU to be? And in relationship to the existing driveway, in relationship to the existing house. And then the other question that I really talk about right up front with everybody is, what are we going to do about infrastructure? Plumbing, electricity, septic. How do you want to handle that? Do you want it to be a standalone system that runs just in the ADU? Do you want to run it off the house? So all of those things sort of fall into place, or tend to fall into place. We've built ADUs on large lots, and we've also built ADUs on small, what I would call city-sized lots, where they're like a quarter of an acre. So it can be done on both. It really just depends on what the people who are trying to build, what they want and where they want it.
It's a great segue for the City of Saco's planning staff. What should homeowners understand about Saco's zoning and permitting processes for ADUs?
We have different districts in the city of Saco, so every district has different setbacks, so they're going to want to come in to find out what their setbacks are. And like with David, they ask me the same questions: where will it fit on my lot? Is it on septic? Is it on sewer? Impact fees, which there are for sewer hookups. So basically, they would want to know, right now we only allow it on single families. It's going to change, but they want to know when they can have it and where it can be and what the cost will be and how long it takes for permits and stuff like that.
Thank you. You brought up timing, and so I'd like to hear from construction. Can you talk us through sort of a typical project timeline, if that's such a thing, from start of design to move in?
Mm-hmm. For us, a typical timeline would be about 10 months from starting the design process to project completion. Here's your keys, certificate of occupancy. The majority of that for us would be spent in design and then permitting and designing, building the home offsite. We do modular construction, but a typical timeline is about 10 months from starting design. Typically, there's some conversations that happen before then. So I think if If you're just starting the process, I think a realistic timeline might be closer to a year to have those conversations, to talk with lenders, to talk with the town and see what it is that you can do before you actually start the design process.
I would sort of concur in terms of the timeline. We're very different in terms of building. We are a traditional construction company in the sense that we dig the hole, we pour the foundation, we put the walls up, we put the roof on, we build the house. And I jokingly say, but it's pretty true, that it takes us about 5 months from the time we pour the walls until we finish the house. And, and when I say house, that includes ADUs. Because really, an ADU is really just a smaller home. It has everything in it that a traditional home has. So we have to worry about foundations, we have to worry about how we're going to frame the house, how we're going to roof the house, how we're going to side the house, what are we going to use for windows, all of that. All of the things that you traditionally would worry about in a larger home. So it takes us, our timeline is about 5 months from when we pour the foundation.
Thank you. So this is all exciting, and people are now probably thinking, so how do I pay for this? So I'm going to shift over to our lenders and ask, what are our options for financing an ADU?
There are a few different options, and that's why I always reference you want to start with talking to a lender, because you can share your thoughts and your plans with them, even if they're in a sort of a general sense. But then at that point, they can start to explain what these options are to you. For instance, you may have first mortgage refinance options. Again, if you have a real nice first mortgage rate, that might not be the way you want to go. But again, you can have this conversation with your lender. Does a home equity line of credit make more sense? Do you need an actual second lien ADU product because you need to bring in the equity that ADU is going to add to the equation? And there are a couple other options as well. So again, if you talk with your lender, you can really get a better understanding of what your options are. And then as you go to the builders, I think that gives you a clearer picture on what you're going to need once you get to that point. So start with the lender, get a good idea on the financing options, and then you can bring the lender into that equation.
Yeah, and I'd say also based on some of those options, all of them have pros and cons, and some things to think about too when a lender's reviewing those options with you are, if you, like Mark talked about, if you're looking to get a home equity line of credit, that pretty much means that you're going to be monitoring the project yourself, and a lot of those choices and kind of keeping up with all the draws and stuff like that are going to kind of be on you personally, whereas if you get maybe an ADU specific type product where the bank is going to have some sort of monitoring involved, internal or external third-party monitoring. That kind of takes the onus and the burden off of you to sit back and kind of say, okay, they're kind of helping me out. They're really looking out for my best interest and making sure that everything's complete on time and to budget.
So I want to ask all the panelists, if someone here tonight is just starting to explore this idea, what's the first step from your perspective, whether that's finance or construction or the city? What's their first step for you? And I think we might have heard over here, call your lender. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, again, talk to the lender. Again, this process for us is fairly quick and straightforward. So we get the information we need, we get a good idea of what you're looking to do. Again, it's kind of much like if you've got a traditional mortgage, you're going to look at credit, debt-to-income ratios, the amount of equity you have, sort of look at these factors, and that can oftentimes dictate what programs you qualify for and give you, it just gives you that understanding of, okay, this is what we can afford, let's go talk to the builder, and let's get, we know what we can do, so now you can get the project started. So talk to the lender.
Perfect. And from the construction perspective, what's their first step for you guys?
I second that talking with a lender would be a good first step. I have had some projects where somebody might have sold a house, and so they actually didn't need a lender. They just had a pocket full of cash. How nice would that be? So I think getting clear with, it's not always an ADU being built on a property for a family member, but it often is, and if that happens to be your circumstance, I think really evaluating what life will be like with that family member living on your property, either attached or detached to your home, and just really getting clear about what everybody's expectations are in the project, on the property, is a good first step, no matter whether or not you're going with a lender or not. So that would be my 2 cents.
Along those lines, but I think maybe this is just me, I don't worry about the money. I tend to worry about what is the house going to look like that's on your property. So the very first thing that I would say to somebody who wants to build a house on their property, you're going to be staring at this for a period of time, like 10, 15, 20, 30 years, something like that. So think about what kind of house you'd like it to be. Because it's going to, in essence, as I've said before, it really is a smaller house. So we're working on one right now, or working on a design for one now that's a traditional cape. It's literally a 2-story ADU. And it looks like, I think of it like what you would normally see in a traditional cape, with a full dormer on the back and dormers on the front porch, and a back porch. And it really lends itself not only to the property that it's going to go on, but it also lends itself to the neighborhood. So that kind of is, I think, the first step. And then, obviously, you need to worry about the money, for sure. But then figure out what kind of house you would like to have, and does it fit your budget, and what kind of budget do you have for the house? So.
I would say the first step would come to me, call my office and set up an appointment, because I'm going to let you know where it fits on your property, what your setbacks will be, and if a detached or attached is better, and where you want it, over the garage, in the basement, in the attic, or out back. It may depend on property to property, we'll decide that, so best to come to me before you go to invest in a builder or bank, and then you have your answers, what you can do, and then you can go after them later.
I'd like to piggyback off that for a second, too. As the assistant city planner who is the liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, Dave can also tell you if you're in the Historic Preservation Overlay District in Saco, which, you know, you can still build an ADU in Saco within the Historic Overlay District. In fact, we just got somebody approved to do that over on North Street, but it is an extra step, and you don't want to basically go in for your building permit and after putting in all your utilities and get stopped and being like, actually, you also have to go and talk to the commission. You're going to want to know that up front.
That's great. So Dave and Jeff, based on your answer, Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. What's this going to cost?
I looked at this question and I thought, oh God, how do I answer this one? It really depends on the plan that you come up with. You know, what I can tell you is that we have built a smaller ADU, I think, for as low as about $150,000 or $175,000 all in. And we've also built some very expensive ones, and they can run the gamut. It really depends on where you're building and what you want to put into the house. You know, we've done houses, and I keep saying houses, but to me, I just think of them as small houses. So we've done houses, ADUs, with lots of tile work, lots of hardwood floors, lots of extra finishes, and that tends to drive the price up, just as it would in a traditional home. But by the same token, we've also done some where we've saved the homeowners some money, and they've been involved in the building process, and that saved them some money, and so it's come in considerably less than that. So I don't know. And it really depends on the land as well, too, because if you're going to excavate, there's so much involved in it. Like in the excavation process, it depends on how big is the hole that you're digging, how high the foundation that you're putting in. Are you putting in a crawl space or 8-foot walls? You know, all of that obviously adds into the cost of the home. So.
Thank you, Jeff. Do you want to throw in an answer?
Yeah, definitely there's a lot of variables that go into the cost, but I typically see from soup to nuts what the total project cost would be for an ADU between $250,000 and $350,000, $250,000 to $350,000. Finishes, size, site constraints, all of those things can be at play.
So if you want fancy, it costs more, is what you're saying, both of you? Yeah.
Typically, yeah, typically.
For the city planners, how many ADUs have you permitted? How many do you want to permit? And what do you think is holding back residents from going down this path? Any of you that want to answer, please chime in.
The city of Saco has allowed ADUs since 2010. We've allowed detached ADUs since 2021. In the fiscal year ending '23, we did 12 ADUs. Before that, we averaged 6 to 8. Fiscal year ending July 1st, or June 30th, 2024, we did 11, and ending this June 30th, we did 16. So the numbers are rising. What's holding people back, I think, is not knowing about this. Something like this tonight will help. I had people in my office today, I told them what their options would be on their land. They walked out with 4 brochures to hand out to their relatives about ADUs.
That's wonderful for everyone here. I love that. So I'm going to go back to Jeff and Dave before we talk about money again. Are you seeing new design priorities like accessibility, future flexibility, energy performance? Are those things influencing your work? And I'm going to have Jeff answer that one first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are always on the cutting edge. We are always learning and adapting as we've been building. We've built over 100 ADUs at this point, and through trial by fire, we've been honing in what it is that we do, learning from previous experience. So items like accessibility, wider doorways for possible future either walkers or wheelchairs are often design requests. Accessible bathrooms, maybe not fully ADA compliant, although we can do that. I often see folks wanting to design a space that works for them and maybe to be able to have a place for a walker or somebody to assist in the bathroom while not having to be fully ADA accessible, and all the things that go with that, like a pedestal sink and things like that. So yeah, we are typically building for the future with folks, and future flexibility. I often have folks looking to do, maybe the next 10 to maybe 20 years for their in-laws to live there, but thinking long-term on the property, how are we going to use the space when that time comes? So those design talks are often had, yeah.
The one thing that I would add, I certainly agree with all of that. There have been a couple of ADUs where we built wider doorways to make them more accessible and made them ADA compliant. But we also have spent a fair amount of time on the heating systems for the ADUs to make sure that we primarily use heat pumps. And we primarily install heat pumps and a secondary heat source, whether it's a fireplace or some other secondary heat source, in case of emergencies or in case of something goes wrong or they need a second heat source. But I kind of joke with everybody because of the insulation that we now put into homes today. You can pretty much heat these ADUs with a candle. But so they tend to heat very well with heat pumps, and a lot of times in an ADU we'll even put a small fireplace, like a small gas fireplace. And not only does it look nice, but it adds a little bit of heat to the building as well. We also did one ADU where on the south-facing windows we built with a, not to use my hands too much, but a big shed roof, 14 feet in the front and 8 feet in the back. And on the 14-foot wall, we put 2 rows of windows. And it was on the south-facing side, and that tended to heat the building more than you can imagine. It was almost like they would never have to turn their heat on because no matter what, the sun was working. We've also worked with local solar panel companies. And I think, maybe this is just me, but I really think it's a crying shame that we don't use more solar energy to sort of heat some of these units and do that as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. So Tammy, you kind of touched on this in the beginning. I'm curious, does building an ADU typically affect property value or their borrowing power? And what should people know about using home equity construction loans or refinancing sort of in that context?
Sorry. They do increase your value, and they can increase your borrowing power. especially if you're looking to add an ADU for rental income. Sometimes you can use 75% of the market rental rates for that to qualify. Or if you've had 2 years of history renting, you can use that to qualify as well. So it does actually increase the borrowing power.
Yeah, I think it's, making sure that you're getting educated by your lender. I think what's important to understand is different products offer different ways from an appraisal perspective. So when we talk about that, we're talking about maybe an as-is appraisal, which doesn't really take into effect maybe the improvements that you're making, so the ADU that you're building, and only considers the existing structure, whereas a lender will have other products that will consider, what you're looking to add on for improvements, which is called the subject to or as complete appraisal. So I think it's really important to understand those two different concepts when you're talking to a lender, because ultimately, to Tammy's point, it's going to impact your borrowing power.
Going back to the city, and I thought you'd already answered this, so I just want to make sure that I revisit it just in case. Are there any recent updates or changes that people should be aware of in Saco beyond what you've already discussed?
Not until 1829 becomes law. At this point, you've said everything that's going on, but it will change.
We're humans, right? We can't leave things alone. Sticking with the city for a minute, how is the city approaching ADUs as part of its broader housing strategy, and what resources or support can the city offer to residents who want to explore this path?
So I'll take that one. So when I first came on board with the city about 3 years ago, one of my first projects was actually working with Age-Friendly Saco to put together the booklet that is now available at the back of the room. Some of the things that we also did to make ADUs a little bit more attractive is when LD 2003 came along, we took that moment to really look at our current accessory dwelling unit ordinance and see where it could be improved. So that is the moment when we actually expanded the size of those ADUs from 800 to 1,000 square feet, actually very specifically for the goal of making them more ADA accessible to allow, for those larger hallways, doorways, bathrooms, all of those things, so that you really could age in place. So we've been working very steadily to, make them more attractive and allow them to fit the needs of our population, which is aging. And so we, as staff, are more than happy to answer questions about ADUs as they come up, and we are always looking at ways to kind of improve our own ordinances to allow for greater flexibility. The other thing that we're doing right now is we actually have a housing action plan that's being put together by the city. We've had a couple of public events regarding that plan so far, and I think there will most likely be more in the future. So we are very much focused on housing. Where's it going to go? What's it going to look like? And how do we get it to be what the residents are looking for? So thank you.
Either of you want to add? No, okay. I would say that with the Maine being the oldest age-wise in the country, and with our massive labor shortage, which is being exacerbated by the housing crisis, you guys are doing an amazing job. So just kudos to you for the work that you're doing. The last question that I want to ask, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone considering an ADU in Saco that we haven't already discussed?
I think it's really important just to get educated, whether it's with going to the town to talk about what your meets and bounds are on your particular property, talking to a builder. I know we've kind of beat a dead horse with talking to a lender, but I think all that's really important. But from a financial perspective, I think it's important to know what your borrowing power is. You might be thinking one amount, but you might be qualified for another, and maybe you're not comfortable with that payment. So I think it's really important to kind of understand what those meets and bounds are before you get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I second what Matt said over there. I think that's dead on. I think getting clear about what it is that you're looking to do, talking with the town, talking with lenders, just really talking with your family, getting clear about what it is that you're hoping to do, is going to just make the process smoother. So.
The one thing that I would add, which we talked a little bit about, is I think you need to focus, or people need to focus on what type of ADU you are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you are interested in a detached ADU, an attached ADU, or an ADU that's part of your existing structure. And all three of those variations come with all sorts of questions to be answered. And I think what sometimes is overwhelming or difficult to do is to look at those three choices and try to come up with all the answers to all the choices, and then you really haven't come up with an answer to anything. So if you can sort of figure out, if you could, what type of ADU would you like on your property?
Mine would be to ask questions. The more information you have and the more knowledge you have, it'll make your process much smoother and better for you. So always ask questions. There are no stupid questions, just stupid answers.
Perfect. So it's at this time that I would like to open this up for questions and answers. Shannon's going to come around with a microphone. We are recording this, so it is important that you use a microphone to make sure that your questions are picked up. And if you want to direct the question to a particular panelist, please let us know.
I have a question about habitable space as far as the 1,000 square feet minimum or maximum, I should say. My understanding is habitable space does not include closets, bathrooms, hallways, garages. Is that correct?
No, bathrooms, hallways do count. Stairways, like if it's up over the garage, that's common space, but once you enter that door to the apartment, that's where the 1,000 square feet takes effect.
What about basements?
If the basement is accessible by the dwelling units also, then it's common space. If it's only accessed through the unit, then it's part of the unit. So,
And, sorry, one more question. Unfortunately, we're not residents of Saco. We're looking into Kennebunk, where we have a home. My question is, the house that we have currently has a septic system. Would it require another septic system, or can you tie into the septic system?
is it attached or detached?
We're looking at detached.
Detached is considered by most as a separate dwelling unit, and a separate dwelling unit has to have at least a two-bedroom system, and a two-bedroom system would be considered a major expansion, which has to be put in the ground. If it's attached and you're adding one bedroom, it's a minor expansion. You can have something designed and recorded but not placed in the ground. But it's detached one, shall have placed in the ground because it's a major expansion on the septic.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing, not to get stuck on the septic systems, but that is a place where you'll find it's expensive. And one of the other issues, and what reminded me, one of the ADUs that we built, also because of the septic system that we were putting in place, we found that we needed to also install a grinder pump, an auxiliary pump, to help the septic system. So because of where it was on the land and all of that kind of thing. So when you are exploring the idea of the detached ADU, pay attention to that septic system and how are you going to hook either into the city or the town or whatever's existing system or the house, or will you need an auxiliary pump of some sort?
Just one question around taxes on ADU. I don't know if I missed, we came in just a little bit late. What can you tell us about the taxation?
Sure. So ADUs get taxed as livable space, right? Whatever you add to the property, it's going to get taxed as if it was part of the main structure you've attached it to or as its own separate structure, there's no additional premium because it's specifically an ADU above just other living space you might have on your property, but it will raise your taxes. Like they mentioned, it raises your value. That always leads to more taxes, unfortunately.
What is the timeline for the ADU adjustment on multifamily properties, or ADU ability to be on multifamily?
It looks like 1829 is going to allow it. We, in the city of Saco, only allow them on a single-family property. So if that takes effect July 1st of 26, so.
And is the maximum square footage, is an ADU considered an ADU if it's a garage with a unit on top of it, like a new build? Now, is that 1,000 square feet if it's a garage and then a unit, living unit above, or is that different?
If the garage has a common door that the owner or the main house can get into, it's common space. And then the ADU is just the second floor. If there's just a garage door and no common door, then it would be part of the ADU.
Okay, thank you.
In reference to the gentleman that asked a question about taxes, if I build a $350,000 detached ADU, when does the town reassess my property, or when will that $350,000 be added to my taxes?
Sure. So everything in Maine is taxed as it exists as of April 1st of any given year. So just as an example, if you started building the building process right now and using the 10-month time frame that they threw out there, right? So as of April 1st, you might see a bit of that if there's anything in the ground, but you wouldn't realize that full potential value until the tax year following whatever April 1st it's complete on. So if you finished it in, say, January of 25, it's done as of January of 25. On the first bill that just came out in fall of 25, you would see that additional value reflected on your taxes.
Different question. So I build a detached ADU. Does it have to be sprinklered?
As of right now, yes, but 1829 is doing away with sprinklers for all the ADUs. So that next July 1st, that should go away.
So if I build one over my garage attached to my current house,
We do not require sprinklers for attached ADUs at this point. Basically, we first started that when we first adopted it, but the fire marshal's office said it was all or nothing, the whole house, which was making it unaffordable, so we only kept sprinklers for detached units, but that also will go away, so.
If you have a detached unit, I heard something mentioned about the septic, or if I have a city sewer, can it run into the existing house, or does it have to be separate?
We've had it both ways. Whatever's easier. Sometimes it's easier to go to the house if you're in the backyard. If it's beside it, sometimes you can get to the street. A lot of it's about pitch. The pipe has to have a certain pitch to it, and if you can't get it, you might have, it depends where you go.
Is the impact fee the same either way?
Yes, it is.
What about the water side?
That you'd have to call the water district on. We don't do anything with the water.
So it potentially, you can run the water from the house to the
Yes, you can.
detached?
Yep.
Because it's...
Or tie-in new?
Yep. Most likely, they don't like to put more than one on a property, but it's up to them, that they're independent.
I typically see an upgraded meter. So if you have a 5/8 meter, which is typical for a single-family home, I've seen the water district require you to go to a 3/4 inch meter, but then you can tee off of that and service the ADU. They don't like to typically do more than 1 meter per property.
On the financing side, what would be the main difference between a regular construction loan and an ADU loan? Is there a difference?
They're actually very similar in terms of we're looking at the after improved value. So we're going to collect the plans and specs that you get from the builder and give that to the appraiser, who's going to give us what is that after improved value. So we add that into the equation. So they are very similar in that regard. Also, the lender is going to hold the funds in escrow and disperse those throughout the project. So very similar in that regard.
And just one more question along that line for the financing. So I'm the homeowner, and if I'm doing an ADU for a family member, can I add that person onto that separate, is it considered a separate loan against my original mortgage? Or does it have to be based on the original property owner?
As the owner of the property, you would need to be on the loan. You could add them as a co-borrower if you were doing a second lien ADU loan. So there are examples of when you could add them onto that loan with you as the owner of the property, but you would have to be on the loan.
Yeah, just wondering if we could add, does it then tie into my original mortgage, or does it stay separate?
It can be a separate second lien. That is an option. Yep. So you can leave your first alone, because a lot of people have that nice first mortgage rate, so we have our second lien products for that reason, because lenders recognize that a lot of people out there with this 2%, 3%, and 4%.
I'm not here to build one, but I just wondered, what are abutters' rights in this case? And what brings me to that point is, down at the end of the street, there's a lovely little cape, and they wanted to build an accessory unit in the back, and that was all fine. We were going to have a small building behind another small building, but that building went up 3 stories, right up to the abutting line. So the people behind them have this tall building looking down into the backyard. If I had the people behind me build in their space behind their house and look down in my backyard, I would think that that would be depreciating my property. And that's why I'm concerned about what the people that live next door to where this is happening, what rights do we have about space?
So just in case the recording didn't pack that up, the question is, what do the abutters have for rights around ADUs going in, abutting their property?
If the person building the ADU meets all the zoning questions correctly and they meet all building codes, really you don't have much say because it's their property. We have height restrictions for all buildings, we have setbacks, and that's what should protect their neighbors. So if they follow the rules, we can't stop them, and you don't have much say on that either. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Go once. Going twice. Ah, I knew I'd get someone.
So on the lot size and the setbacks and all that, is there any type of, if you're on a really, really tiny lot, are there any variances allowed?
An accessory dwelling unit does not require extra lotted coverage. I mean, if you have if you need like 5,000 per dwelling unit, you wouldn't need any extra for that accessory dwelling unit unless you're in the shoreline zoning. Anything in shoreline zoning requires enough as a separate dwelling unit, but not on a regular lot. If you've maxed out, you can still put an ADU without requiring more lot coverage or more lot area to build it.
So if the setbacks were 15 feet and you can't meet that, you can still build, is that what you're saying?
Oh, you have to meet the setbacks. You can get a variance, but you have to show hardships. So it's not, a variance is very hard to get. It's not guaranteed.
Yeah, I know that we're in Saco and we're focusing in on Saco. There are other municipalities in the state that have actually reduced the setbacks for accessory dwelling units to accessory structure, so like a shed or garage setbacks, which are typically smaller setbacks. Portland is an example that they've allowed ADUs to be about 3 feet off of the side setback, whereas single families need to be typically at about 15. So anybody who's not in Saco, I know we're aiming it for Saco, but there are circumstances.
All right. If there are no more questions, I'm just going to sit down.
Excellent, thank you. So we actually have an ask for all of you tonight. Alexis in the back has a flyer that has a survey code, and this code is being shared with government entities that are looking to put together some financial supplementation for ADUs. And so if you can take that survey, just takes a few minutes. That data will help us help the government put together these potential supplemental financial opportunities in the future. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. So with this, I guess I just want to thank all the panelists for sharing their expertise. Thank all of you for coming here tonight. We hope you leave with a clearer picture of what ADUs are, how they work here in Saco, and the resources available to help you explore your own project. If you'd like to stay connected, both Backyard ADUs and the City of Saco have information available tonight on how to sign up for updates and future events. You're also welcome to speak with our panelists, grab their business cards if you'd like to. We definitely would like to keep the conversation going. And again, thank you for giving us an hour of your evening tonight. Drive safe.
Thanks, Shay.